Now, for the grand finale, we have our example of Krishna consciousness in the world that so popular because of his energy for spreading Krishna consciousness and speaking about Krishna consciousness so expertly. Such an honor to have you on today, Amarendra Prabhu. Thank you very much for immediately agreeing every time we ask you. We welcome you to address all the devotees who are, by the way, not just in the Zoom room, but we have several other social media outlets where devotees are listening in. And we do get the recordings go on, and thousands and, yes, tens of thousands of people listen to these. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, dear Vaisheshika Prabhu, for blessing me with this honor of being in this esteemed assembly. I don't see myself in any way worthy enough to be here, but I really thank you from the bottom of my heart for considering me for this service. I feel this Zoom room is like Ramayan, where we have many Hanumans, but I come here as a small squirrel trying to push little sand particles in the building of the bridge. Thank you for having me here. And my prostrated obeisances, starting off with His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj. I have felt immensely and profusely benefited, Maharaj, by your books on Govardhan and your lectures on the Parikrama, Vrindavan, Radhakund, and Govardhan. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love the book on Vrindavan, the playground of God. Thank you for your contributions. And thank you, dear Shashinandan Maharaj. Such an honor and pleasure to see you here. Right from the time I read your Nectarian Ocean of the Holy Name, I have been touched by your classes and your presentations on the Holy Name and your ecstatic kirtan chanting. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you. And thank you, Vaisheshika Prabhu, for leading from the front this worldwide revolution, grassroots book distribution revolution in this world. In the fire of material existence, you're not just extinguishing the fire of distress, but actually adding the fire of bhakti by setting everything, setting hearts ablaze, setting the movement ablaze, setting corners of all continents ablaze with book distribution. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. And to each one of you present here, all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis, thank you for being here. Vancha kalpatrubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So I was really touched by the presentations, and I really loved the point that there is book distribution even in the spiritual world. As we know, Goloka Vrindavan is the transcendental abode of Radha and Krishna's sweet, loving pastimes. And Brinda Devi is in charge of sending messages through her lovely parrots, Daksha and Vichakshana. And we understand that the word Vrindavan, one means forest, and Vrinda is the beautiful, wonderful Sakhi of Radha and Krishna, who is the forest goddess, who's in charge of all the pastimes. She's like the director of the Braj Planning Commission, that commission which takes care of all the pastimes of Braja. So we can say that all the books of Srila Prabhupada, all the transcendental literature, they're none different from Vrindavan. Why? Because every page, white page, reminds us of Srimati Radharani, and the black print reminds us of Shyam Sundar. So every page of the transcendental literature is the wonderful, beautiful playground of the divine couple. And these books, starting from the Bhagavad Gītā, Bhagavatam, every single book is actually Vrindavan. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. The word vraja has been used by Krishna straight in the Bhagavad Gītā. And many indications of Vrindavan has been made straight in the Bhagavad Gītā. Like, for example, Krishna says, Punya Gandha Prithivyamcha in the Bhagavad Gītā. Krishna says that I am the fragrance of Mother Earth. But he doesn't say why. We understand Srimati Radharani has a very beautiful name, and her name is Gandharvika. Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami mention that Radharani is called Gandharvika because she adds fragrance to Mother Earth by the touch of her lotus feet. She sings like the heavenly damsels, or we could say the heavenly damsels try to sing like Radharani. And at the same time, she is the abode of all transcendental aromatic fragrances. And remembering the Brajbasis, especially the Brajagopis, especially Srimati Radharani, Krishna says, I am the fragrance of Mother Earth. Just speaking in subtle, hidden messages. Parokshavadam, it's called, indirect speech. So in this way, we can see that Bhagavad Gītā has philosophy. It's a very wonderful conversation between best of friends, and at the same time has the entrance, the roadway to Vrindavan. We can see that the gopis of Vrindavan sang 5 songs in the 10th canto. They sang the Venu Geet, chapter 21. They sang the Gopi Geet, chapter 31. They sang the Yugal Geet, chapter 35. The Viraha Geet, chapter 39. And the Brahmar Geet, chapter 47 of the 10th canto. And Krishna tried to reciprocate with the songs of the gopis by singing one song, which is called the Bhagavad Gītā, the song of God. Because Krishna cannot reciprocate to the love of the devotees. The devotees are singing 5 songs and Krishna is singing one song in the form of the Bhagavad Gītā. And it's so fascinating that Krishna tries to reciprocate to the devotees. And what did the Brajavasis do? Chalasi yad braja charayan pashun nalina sundaram nathate padam shilatrinankurai sidatitinaha kalilatam mana kanta gacchati. In the Gopi Geet, the gopis are talking to one another and they're saying, "Oh dear Sakhi, our hearts are burning in distress that Shyam Sundar Krishna, on the pretext of taking the herds of cows into the forest, is walking barefoot. And the soft lotus feet, the sole of his beautiful pink lotus flower-like lotus feet is scratched by the pebbles and the thorns and the rocks of Vrindavan. How can we help him?" And the Braja Gopis sit all night and they remove the pebbles and the rocks and the stones from on the path from Krishna's home into the forest, so that the next day when Krishna walks, those stones don't trouble him. Of course, anyway, the stones of Braja are actually placed at the right place by Brinda Devi, so they don't trouble Krishna. They actually serve him. But it's the mood of the Braja Gopis that all night long they sit and they move the rocks from Krishna's home up to the forest that he's going to visit the next day. Krishna can't reciprocate with this. Next day when he walks, he sees that there are no stones, no pebbles, and it's the soft, wonderful dust of Govardhan. So Krishna feels in his heart, how can I reciprocate? How can I reciprocate to the Brajbasis? How can I reciprocate to my devotees? And therefore, dear devotees, he speaks Bhagavad Gītā. Why? Just like the devotees remove thorns and stones on the path of God, Krishna speaks Bhagavad Gītā and removes the thorns and the stones on the path of the living entities return back to Godhead. When we are trying to go back home, back to Godhead, there are so many thorns and so many rocks and so many pebbles in the form of misunderstanding and confusion and bewilderment. We don't know who is God. We don't know where he exists. We don't know what our relationship with him is. We don't know whether he has a form, we don't know whether he's male, whether he's female. Does he exist at all? So many pebbles, so many sharp rocks are there in our heart. And they don't let us go back home, back to Godhead. So by speaking the Bhagavad Gītā, Krishna is reciprocating to the residents of Braja by removing the thorns and the rocks of bewilderment from the path of the conditioned soul's journey back home, back to Godhead. So Bhagavad Gītā is actually Krishna's reciprocation of love to the residents of Braja. This Bhagavad Gītā is the greatest gift to the world. Shripad Adi Shankaracharya has written, Maline mochanam pumsam jalasnanam dine dine sakrit Gītā amritasnanam samsara malinashanam. Just like by bathing with soap water, the body becomes purified. By bathing in the waters of the Bhagavad Gītā, the mind and the consciousness becomes purified. There's no soap water in this world which can purify the mind, but it is the Bhagavad Gītā. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, whose disappearance day we are celebrating today, who's the founder of the Brihad Mridanga concept, whose lotus feet Srila Prabhupada followed all his life and gave the gift of book distribution in this world. That Prabhupada Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in his purport to Chaitanya Bhagavat, he writes that when Vaman Dev came in this world, he ruptured the shell of the material world and gave Ganga through his lotus feet. How beautiful. When Vamandev came in this world, he ruptured the shell of the material world by the touch of his toenail and got in the flowing of the Ganga through his lotus feet. And that same Ganga came in this world, not through the lotus of Vaman's feet in Kali Yuga, but through the lotus of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's eyes in the form of his tears. Ganga came through the feet of Vamandev, but comes through the eyes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the form of his tears. But dear devotees, Vaman avatar took place in Satya Yuga, so Ganga came through the Lord's feet. And Chaitanya Leela took place in Kali Yuga, so Ganga came through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's eyes. But what about Dwapar Yuga? In Dwapar Yuga, Ganga didn't come through the lotus of the Lord's eyes or the lotus of the Lord's feet. Ganga came through the lotus of Sri Krishna Chandra's lips in the form of the Bhagavad Gītā. In every generation, Ganga has come from a different limb of the Lord's body. And just like when we bathe in the Ganga, Ganga takes us back to where she came from, that is the lotus feet. If we bathe in the Ganga of the Bhagavad Gītā, the sacred waters of the Bhagavad Gītā, she will take us back to the smiling, beautiful, wonderful, moon-like face of Shyamsundar in Praja, in Vrindavan. This is the gift of the Bhagavad Gītā. And therefore, Sripad Adi Shankaracharya says, Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gītam. If there's one scripture that we have to hold close to our hearts, that should be the Bhagavad Gītā. Sometimes it may seem to be a very sectarian, very narrow-minded statement, right? It may seem like that. Like even in the Bhagavatam, we see this, that Kim Anyai Shastra Vistarai, that what's the need for any other scripture if we have Srimad Bhagavatam? Well, the example given is, if you have one bike that can take you to your school or to the store, why do you need 5? If there's one bicycle that you can sit on and you can cycle your way, use that bike to go to school, why do you need 5? So if there's one scripture which can take us back to Krishna, you don't need anything else. That's the solution to all problems. So therefore, dear devotees, we see Sripad Madhvacharya, Sripad Adi Shankaracharya. So many wonderful acharyas have glorified the Bhagavad Gītā. My Guru Maharaj, Param Pujyapad Srila Radha Govinda Maharaj, in one class he was explaining that before he came to ISKCON, he had read the Bhagavad Gītā of Vinoba Bhave, the Bhagavad Gītā of Dr. Radha Krishnan, the Bhagavad Gītā of so many other Aurobindo and so many other authors. And then when he came to Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gītā as it is, my Guru Maharaj explains, he was thinking, I've always seen the title as Bhagavad Gītā, but this is the first time I see a title as it is. So he thought to himself, does this mean that the other Bhagavad Gītās are not as they should be? And out of curiosity, he started reading. And then he explains that no other Bhagavad Gītā explained the words of Krishna like Prabhupada did. And what a contribution. The original works are in Sanskrit. Prabhupada gives them transliterated in English, breaks all the grammatical rules. I can give you an example where Prabhupada does this. I'm just going to screen share for a minute. Look at this. Look at this beautiful verse. Now, this is Bhagavad Gītā chapter 18, text 68. We'll come to the translation, but just want to express gratitude to Srila Prabhupada. Now look at this. The word is yaha with an H. But by grammatical rules, the H is dropped. And this is the original one, yah. But Prabhupada takes the time out to give the original word according to the grammatical usage. And the original word is mat. But Krishna says mad. The original word is bhakteshu. Krishna says bhakteshva with a V. The original words you can see here, mam, eva, eshyati, and Krishna just gives them as evaishyatya samshaya, as one word. You can see how long a word this is. Prabhupada takes time out to break them down grammatically, gives the original Sanskrit and English, and then breaks them individually to their root Sanskrit words, and explaining what they mean, and then give the translation, and then give the purport, and in the purport include the purports of other acharyas, and in the purport include so many evidences from other scriptures. Then in the purport include examples and analogies and his personal experiences. Now that's a gift to the modern time. There's been no commentator who has done that in the history of mankind. And not just that, Srila Prabhupada, being in the same generation, the generation that we live in, is speaking to solve the problems of the present times. When we read like a Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur or a Baladev Vidyabhushan or the Acharyas in the past, they have spoken the spiritual principles which are eternal. But Prabhupada in his purports, he also talks about contemporary issues and how to use Krishna conscious philosophy in those situations. Talking about the translation here, dear devotees, for all those who preach Krishna consciousness and distribute Prabhupada's books, Krishna has given a benediction here. For one who explains the supreme secret, Krishna has guaranteed he will come to me. How wonderful is that? And as reference, we can have so many verses, starting with Bhagavad Gītā 1868. Then we have Srimad Bhagavatam 177, the benefit of distributing transcendental message, literature. What happens? We lose lamentation in life. We lose illusion in life. We lose fear in life. And what do we gain? The feeling of loving devotional service to Radha and Krishna. What happens when we preach Krishna consciousness? Krishna manifests himself in our hearts. That's 284, dear devotees, Bhagavatam. I have been asked to give 3 proofs in the scriptures in this talk as to how preaching Krishna consciousness, either through giving katha or distributing books, how does it benefit us and where in the scriptures are the benefits given? So just to recapitulate, this is Bhagavad Gītā 1868, Srimad Bhagavatam 177, then Srimad Bhagavatam 284, that those who give this message to others by hearing, chanting and preaching and distributing, Krishna manifests himself in their hearts. Not just that. Then we take a few more examples. Those who hear this message, those who receive these books, what happens? Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gītā, if they accept this philosophy or they accept these books with faith and without envy, immediately Krishna says they become free from sinful reactions. At that point when they touch the book, I promise, that's the start of their good fortune. And if they follow that path, Krishna says they will attain the auspicious planets where the pious dwell. Can we see this beautiful translation of Srila Prabhupada? Let's pay attention to this. Krishna says, Shubhal Lokan, in the plural usage, that a person who accepts Krishna consciousness will attain spiritual planets. Not the spiritual planet, but spiritual planets. What does that mean? It means Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recruits that person in his army, and from planet to planet, as Mahaprabhu performs his pastimes, this person gets a chance to participate in the auspicious planets in the plural usage. How wonderful is that? This message that is being distributed, another reference, Srimad Bhagavatam 12:1250. Dear devotees, this message, when distributed, when heard, when read, which is so attractive, so relishable, ever fresh, what does it do? It causes a festival for the mind and dries up the ocean of misery. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Another reference, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 7, Text 2. The benefits of speaking, hearing, sharing, distributing Krishna Katha. What happens when we hear or read these messages? The dirty things in one's mind vanish. These pastimes are so attractive that they are pleasing to the mind and the heart. It uproots all material things, and one develops attachment for Krishna and friendship with the devotees who give us the contribution of Krishna consciousness. All that we are looking for is right here. All that we are looking for. Krishna talks about book distribution and preaching in Bhagavad Gītā chapter 16, text 1. How does he say that? Let's hear this out. Krishna says, Abhayam sattva samshuddhi, jnana yoga vyavastiti, danam damascha yajñascha, swadhyayastapa arjavam. This is Gītā, chapter 16, text 1. What does Krishna say? He says, become fearless on this path. Don't worry whether people are going to ridicule you when you distribute books, or they're going to ignore you when you distribute books, or whether they're going to purchase the books, they're going to accept Krishna consciousness. Don't worry. Just be nimitta matram bhava savyashachi. Just as His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu says, just take that first step and step out of your house. Just hit the road. That's the first thing. Become fearless. Krishna says, if you do that, if you become fearless as a preacher or as a book distributor, sattva samshuddhi, I will clean up your consciousness. You do your duty and I'll do mine. Then Krishna continues, Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi. Don't forget to read those books. As His Holiness Shashinandan Maharaj said, it's important to give out, but it's also, just like outreach is important, in-reach is important. It's important to reach within us, read, and then give it out. So Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi, very important for preachers and book distributors to read it themselves. And then when they do that, look what Krishna says right here, nectarian words for a book distributor, Dhanam. Krishna says, what you read, what you gain, give it in charity. Give these books out. And Krishna says, that's yajna. That's the sacrifice in Kali Yuga. And if you do that, Krishna says, tapa, that's the greatest austerity. Arjavam, your life will become simple. Krishna talks about that in the Bhagavad Gītā. So dear devotees, so much can be said. Time is always short. One lifetime is short when we speak about preaching and book distribution. But I just want to add one little beautiful Sankirtan story before we wrap up for tonight and today. His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj says a very beautiful story that one man came, one person, he came to the new Vrindavan temple. And the temple management told Radhanath Maharaj to take the devotee around for to have darshan of the deities and to have a nice, wonderful view of the temple. So Maharaj was taking this person, absolutely fresh, brand new, clean slate, as you call it. He's walking for the first time into the temple, and His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj was introducing him to different deities and the process of bhakti. And the person said, well, I know about all this. I've read about these deities and I know about this, and I even chant. Maharaj said, do you chant 16 rounds? He said, yes, I chant 16 rounds. Maharaj said, what mantra do you chant? He said, I chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. So Maharaj said, okay, where did you get that mantra from? He said, oh, long story. I was once at a laundromat and I was eating a watermelon, and I finished the watermelon. I tried throwing the peels of the watermelon, the remains of the watermelon into the trash. And when I put it into the trash, there was something in that trash. I put my hand in, and it was a Bhagavad Gītā as it is. So I've been reading the book continuously for the last 3 years. And that's where I got the mantra from. I've never met a devotee. I've never heard tapes. I've never gone to an ISKCON temple. But I just read it as Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. And that's how I chant my 16 rounds. And dear devotees, he was a welder, someone who does welding by profession. And guess what? He became the welder for the TOVP project for ISKCON Mayapur. Coming from a book that was put in a trash can at a laundromat. That's how these, ticking time bombs, as Prabhupada called them, these books are creating viplava, revolution in the lives of one and all. So thank you so much for having me in this discussion. I feel honored and privileged. Coming from Mumbai, where I was born and brought up, I have been very closely connected to the lotus feet of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj's book distribution team from ISKCON Juhu. And I remember when I was about 8 years old, I got my first book distribution certificate from His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj, who used to arrange under the age of 10, under the age of 15, under the age of 20 book distribution competitions. And from then on up to now, preaching and book distribution in the beautiful, wonderful family of Srila Prabhupada's followers and well-wishers. I feel very honored and blessed and privileged in my life. So thank you, His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu, His Holiness Shashinandan Maharaj, His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj, and each one of you for inspiring me to be here and actually reminding me of what the essence is. I just try to speak for myself. If there were mistakes, please kindly forgive me. And if there was something that inspired It's just coming from Srila Prabhupada and our predecessor acharyas. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa